How can you fit a meaningful job, time with your loved ones, and leisure time into your schedule? Many of us would say that it's impossible, but in 168 hours, productivity expert Laura Vanderkam argues that you can have a full, satisfying life by managing your time intentionally. This guide will explore what it means to manage your time intentionally. Then, you'll learn why and how to be intentional in general, at work, at home, and with your leisure time, so that you can fit in all your favorite activities without overscheduling yourself. Additionally, we'll compare Vanderkam's advice to other experts' ideas on how to practically and intentionally manage your time. New section. The key to productivity: being intentional with your time. As Vanderkam points out, we all have 24 hours a day, or 168 hours in a week. However, we don't get equal amounts done with our 168 hours. For example, Lisa might run a nonprofit, go to Pilates class, do volunteer work, and raise a large brood, while Mary might struggle to do all her tasks at her full-time job, leaving her with only enough time and energy to scroll through her phone messages before she goes to sleep. Why do Mary and Lisa vary wildly in their productivity despite having the same number of hours? Vanderkam contends that this stems from two different approaches to time. Lisa is intentional, actively scheduling her week around her priorities. In contrast, Mary spends much of her time doing low-priority tasks, like unimportant jobs at work, and easy but only mildly satisfying leisure activities, like scrolling through social media. Vanderkam explains that when you're intentional with your time, as Lisa is, you do three things. First, you actively schedule your week around your priorities. Second, you understand your core competencies or unique strengths, the things that you're amazing at or can't outsource, and spend most of the week using these strengths while delegating tasks that you don't excel at. And third, you understand that you choose how to spend your time. If you don't do a task, it's not because you lacked time, but because you didn't want to do it. By doing these three things, she contends you can live a full, meaningful life. What other experts say about being intentional with your time? Like Vanderkam, First Things First author Stephen R. Covey suggests that the most effective people intentionally schedule their week around their priorities rather than letting low-priority tasks fill up their schedule. Unlike Vanderkam, Covey doesn't specify that you focus primarily on the things that you're good at and can't outsource. Instead, Covey suggests that you spend most of your time doing significant but not pressing tasks, like planning your long-term goals and investing time in your relationships. And while he agrees that you should minimize the time you spend on insignificant tasks, he doesn't specify that you should delegate them. Like Vanderkam, Everything is Figure-Outable author Marie Forleo emphasizes that you choose how to spend your time, and if you don't do a task, it simply means that you didn't prioritize it enough. But Forleo adds that you should adopt a similar approach to other areas of your life, explaining that you can almost always do a task if you try hard enough, but you often won't. Unless you recognize that you have total responsibility over whether you do something, you'll continually give excuses and will never make meaningful changes in your life. For example, saying, "I can't join a gym because I'm broke," absolves you of responsibility, while saying, "I won't join a gym because I'm broke," motivates you to find more money to join a gym if you want to do it badly enough. In the next sections, we'll discuss Vanderkam's tips for being intentional in general, at work and at home, so that you make the most of your 168 hours. New section. How to be intentional with your time. Now that you've learned why you need to be intentional with your time in order to build a meaningful life, we'll go through Vanderkam's 4 steps for doing so. 1. Record how you use your 168 consecutive hours. Throughout your day, write down how you spend each hour. Be specific about exactly what you did. Instead of writing dinner, write made stir-fry or ordered and ate takeout. 2. Review your time record to discover how you're currently spending your time. To do so, Vanderkam recommends dividing your activities into major categories, such as sleep, work, or social media. Then add up the hours you spend on each activity. It likely won't add up to 168 hours because you lose some time logging them, but it should get fairly close. Then reflect on your totals. Are you satisfied with the time you're spending on each activity? What could you do differently? Keep in mind that, unlike a day's time, 168 hours should be plenty of time for all the activities that matter to you. Make recording and reflecting on your time easier. Other productivity experts suggest further techniques to make recording and reflecting on your time easier and more effective. For example, track your time for 2 weeks instead of 1. During the first week, you're apt to adjust what you do because you're conscious of the fact that you're tracking yourself, but you'll return to normal by the second week. Record your time whenever you perform an existing habit, like getting water every hour, to maximize the chances that you'll complete your time record instead of giving up on it because it's too burdensome. Not sure how to categorize an activity? Instead of manually writing down your time, download a time tracking app on your computer. Many of them automatically track and categorize your activities, so you can focus most of your energy on deciding what categories your offline tasks fall into. Alternatively, consider putting the same activity in multiple categories. For example, if you listen to audiobooks while washing dishes, that might count as both leisure and housework. Keep in mind that if you use this strategy, your total may exceed 168 hours, even if you only track 1 week. When reviewing your time record, focus not just on how much time you're spending on various activities, but when you tend to do them to gain a more accurate picture of how to adjust your schedule. For example, if you always eat breakfast but have a snack 1 hour later, changing what you eat for breakfast could help you feel fuller and thus avoid the time spent getting the snack. Additionally, focus on how much the tasks you're stressed out about actually take versus how much time you spend thinking about them. For example, you may feel like you never have enough time for the activities that matter because you have so much email, but you may find that you spend far less time on email than you think, and that you're stressed about it because the anxiety of being constantly available eats up your focus even while you're doing non-email tasks. So reducing your anxiety around email could help you focus on, and thus feel more satisfied with, the time you spend on other activities that matter even if you don't increase any of that time. 3. Identify your unique strengths. You likely know some, but not all of them. To discover your overlooked strengths, Vanderkam suggests creating a bucket list with 100 items on it. Then, review your list and start doing some of the cheap and easy ones. By trying several activities, you'll discover what you like and are good at, and what might count as a unique strength. Be open to the possibility that a unique strength could surprise you. For example, you might take an art history class and discover that analyzing art is a unique strength, and you could use that skill to write a book. 4. Block off time on your schedule first for tasks using your strengths. To ensure you have enough time for what you do best, schedule more time for these tasks and less time for tasks you're not as good at. We'll explain how in the next section. An alternate way to set up your schedule. In The One Thing, Gary Keller suggests an alternate way to set up your schedule. Instead of identifying your unique strengths and building your schedule around them, Keller recommends that you build your schedule around the one thing that would have the most impact on various areas of your life. To do so, Keller suggests that you first identify your purpose, the one thing you want your life to be about more than any other. Instead of creating a bucket list of things you want to try, write down some activities and outcomes you're already passionate about, and pick one activity and one outcome most important to you. Then, combine your activity and outcome to answer the question, what's the one thing I can do that would mean the most to me, so that doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary? For example, if you're passionate about writing, activity, and helping others, outcome, your one thing might involve finding a job as a grant writer who helps nonprofits get funding. Once you've identified your purpose, break it down to determine the one thing you can do each day, week, month, and year to achieve this purpose. Design your schedule around this one thing. Keller says you should schedule it before your other commitments and devote at least 4 hours a day to it as early in your day as possible. The earlier you schedule it, the less likely you are to get distracted by other tasks. New section. Why and how to be intentional at work. Now that you know the importance of being intentional in general, how can you become intentional at work? Vanderkam argues that the key is to do work you love. In this section, we'll explain why you need to do work you love and how to ensure you love work by creating your perfect position. Why you should do work you love. Vanderkam argues that if you want to have a meaningful life, You must intentionally choose work you love for two main reasons. First, you spend many hours at work, so your job satisfaction inevitably affects the rest of your life. If you like your job, you'll have more energy to enjoy your personal life. If you hate your job, your dissatisfaction will lead to lower energy throughout the rest of the week. Second, Vanderkam argues that if you enjoy your job, you're more likely to achieve more in your career. When your job involves your unique strengths, you enjoy it more. When you enjoy your job, you spend more hours working, and thus are more likely to become an expert in your field. That's because research indicates that to excel at a skill, you must spend 10,000 hours of deliberate practice on it, meaning you concentrate and zero in on your weak spots so that you can improve. So to reach the highest level in your career, you must spend 10,000 hours deliberately practicing your work and the related skills, which you'll only do if you genuinely adore your work. Loving your job matters, but it's often not enough to guarantee success. Experts agree that job satisfaction inevitably affects the rest of your life. Being happy at work is linked to better physical and mental health, the lack of which may drain the energy you need both to enjoy your personal life and succeed at work. But loving your job enough to spend 10,000 hours deliberately practicing career-related skills doesn't guarantee success. That's because, as Malcolm Gladwell points out in Outliers, spending 10,000 hours on deliberate practice is often a luxury afforded only to the privileged. You can only practice for 10,000 hours if you spend money to buy yourself more time, like paying for a house cleaner so that you can practice instead of doing chores. Additionally, Anders Ericsson argues in Peak that deliberate practice must be performed under the tutelage of a coach, and paying for a good one also requires money. Create your perfect position. Now that you've learned why you need to do work you love, how can you do so? Vanderkam suggests that you must create your perfect position, a job that has four main elements. First, you enjoy and are good at the work, because it involves your unique strengths, so you're willing to do the work even without the prospect of external rewards. Second, you have some control over how you do the work. For example, you can decide what time you want to work. Third, the work is hard but not too hard, and so provides regular opportunities to enter flow, a mental state in which you're so immersed in the activity that you lose track of time. Fourth, you work in a supportive environment. For example, you have great bosses. Vanderkam states that once you know your perfect position, you must create it. You'll likely not be able to find it since your perfect position is tailored to your strengths and preferences. You thus have two main options when creating this position. How others define a good job. In 9 Lies About Work, the authors make similar arguments regarding what constitutes a good job. They note that deliberately choosing work you love will give you a sense of purpose that leads to fulfillment. They add that employees who set their own goals perform better than those whose goals are imposed by the company, and they explain that being part of a supportive, collaborative team motivates employees more than perks do. Additionally, the authors say your work should provide regular opportunities to enter flow. However, they don't specify that flow comes from work that's hard, but not too hard. Rather, they state that your work should involve your strengths, and regularly entering flow at work indicates that your work involves your strengths. Additional signs that your work involves your strengths are that you look forward to practicing your work skills and that you have a sense of contentment after you do your work. Unlike Vanderkam, the authors don't recommend that you create a position that's uniquely tailored to your strengths and preferences. Rather, they suggest adjusting how you do your current work so that you spend 20% of your time doing work you love, which will greatly decrease your risk of burnout. Twice a year, spend a week categorizing your tasks into A, tasks that energize you, and B, tasks you tend to put off. Deliberately incorporate the tasks in the first group into your work so that they take up at least 20% of your time. Then, manage the tasks that you hate by avoiding them, if possible, combining them with something you enjoy, or working with someone to make a task less burdensome. Start your own company. The first option to create your perfect position is to start your own company. This might involve chasing a lifelong dream. For example, you might finally open the bakery you've always dreamed of having. Alternatively, this might involve starting a company that's not necessarily aligned with your passions, but increases the control and support you have in your life. For example, You might not love accounting, but having your own accounting firm will give you the flexibility to work remotely. Short form note. In the $100 startup, Chris Guillebeau also suggests that having your own company will increase the control you have over your schedule and thus your life. Guillebeau recommends that you start a micro business, which is typically run by one person, selling a single product that you love. You can start a micro business with just $100 and no loans, and if your dream is to sell a product, it can help you fulfill a lifelong dream. And once your business is up and running, you'll be able to outsource tasks so that you can focus more on what matters. Adjust your current position. The second option is to adjust your current position so it's more closely aligned with your ideal. Vanderkam writes that most employers prioritize their bottom line, so they're often not picky about exactly what you do, as long as it brings in profit. As such, they'll likely be willing to adjust your position in the way you want, as long as you frame your desire in a way that prioritizes their profit margin. For example, say you spend half your time marketing a product and half your time selling it, but you're the top salesperson in your company and hate marketing. If you say, "I could double my sales if I didn't spend all this time marketing," your company may be willing to let you reduce or eliminate your marketing responsibilities. How to adjust your current position. Other experts agree with Vanderkam that your employer will likely be flexible about how you work as long as your efforts bring in profit. Before asking to adjust your position, make sure you've mastered your current responsibilities. Your boss will be more open to your requests if you've proven your worth to the company. When you do discuss a potential shift in your tasks, don't jump immediately into your request, as this will put your boss on edge. Instead, get your boss on board with your plan by first describing both your gratitude for your current role and your vision for the future, and then make your request. For example, you might say, "I love working here and love how selling our products helps improve others' lives, and I want to do my best to make our customers happy. I would love to spend more time on sales instead of marketing." Schedule your perfect position. Whether you're starting a business or adjusting your current position, Vanderkam argues that you should schedule your time well using a three-step process. 1. Decide what you mean by work. Vanderkam asserts that anything that involves your unique strengths and furthers your career is work. Any other task, even if it's required for your job, is not work because it's not helping you. To discover what constitutes work, first review your bucket list and pull out your professional goals. Then, map out what you need to do over the next year, 5 years, and 10 years to achieve those goals. Break down your yearly goals into monthly and weekly steps, and decide how much time each step requires, either by researching or by reviewing your own experience. Once you have a clear idea of what work you should be doing, plot it in your schedule. Vanderkam suggests that you work at least 30 hours per week, even if you're working part-time. If you work fewer than 30 hours, you won't be productive enough to reach your career goals. If you work too many hours, you'll grow tired and become unproductive. So you want to hit a sweet spot where you're working enough to be productive without overexerting yourself. Other opinions on redefining work and deciding how much time to spend on it. In Your Money or Your Life, Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin also suggest that you redefine work. However, they define work as any activity you do that aligns with your purposes and dreams. So finding the right work doesn't involve mapping out a 10-year career plan, as Vanderkam recommends. It involves finding your purpose and dreams. To identify your purpose, try identifying your pain. If you've navigated a tough experience, you may have expertise to help others in similar situations. To identify your dreams, imagine that you only have 1 year left to live, and consider what you'd do during that time. Once you identify what work you should be doing, how much time should you spend on it? Some experts agree with Vanderkam's suggestion that 30 hours of work is ideal because your focus declines beyond that point. However, this ignores the economic reality of many people who are financially incapable of devoting merely 30 hours a week to their work, especially if it includes both paid work and unpaid activities that further their career. A July 2022 report says that, due to inflation, more Americans than ever were taking on 2 full-time jobs and working over 70 hours weekly to support themselves. 2. Focus on your work. When you're scheduled to work, focus solely on activities that further your career. Your 30-hour minimum shouldn't include any time that you spend distracted or doing tasks that help your company, but not your career. And don't allow yourself to get behind. Make contingency plans for potential issues that might arise during your work time, like a backup babysitter you can call if your nanny is sick. And if you aren't able to work as planned, immediately readjust the rest of your schedule so that you still achieve your weekly work goal. Short form note: whatever hours you spend at work, maximize the chances that you'll stay focused by tracking your attention, as Chris Bailey suggests in Hyperfocus. For a few days, set an alarm to go off every hour. Each time it goes off, note what you're supposed to be doing and what you are doing instead. By doing so, you'll discover what tends to distract you so that you can make contingency plans and readjust your schedule not just for emergencies but for regular time wasters. For example, if your 5-minute Instagram breaks often stretch into 20 minutes, move your phone from your desk and take 5-minute stretch breaks instead. 3. Delete, diminish, or delegate any job tasks that don't fit your definition of work. To delete tasks, remove yourself from projects that won't further your career. To diminish tasks, devote most of your schedule to actual work and schedule small blocks of time for minor but necessary tasks, such as returning phone calls. To delegate tasks, assign non-unique strength tasks to someone who can do them better than you can. Other perspectives on reducing your job tasks. What if the supposed distractions from your work are job tasks that don't fit in Vanderkam's definition of work? Unlike Vanderkam, Your Money or Your Life authors Dominguez and Robin don't recommend that you delete, delegate, or diminish these tasks. Rather, they note that your work can be paid or unpaid and suggest that you reframe your point of view. Even if your paid work isn't necessarily aligned with your purposes and dreams, choosing to see it as the avenue that allows you to pursue the unpaid work you care about will help you find meaning in unsatisfying tasks. Dominguez and Robin's recommendations may be more realistic than Vanderkam's depending on your sex, your culture, and your title. In Invisible Women, Caroline Criado Perez points out that if you're a woman, refusing administrative work, like taking notes at meetings, makes you seem unlikable to your male colleagues and thus may harm your career. In The Culture Map, Erin Meyer points out that some cultures adhere to schedules only broadly, so you may be unable to devote several hours a day to actual work because you have no idea whether a phone call will take 5 minutes or 2 hours. And if you're in a junior position at a company, you may lack the authority to delegate a non-unique strength task to someone else. New section. Why and how to be intentional at home. You've learned how to be intentional at work, but how can you be intentional at home? Vanderkam argues that the key is to focus on your unique strengths, just as you would in business. Specifically, she recommends that you focus on your children and your partnership, and that you limit how much time you spend on your housework. In this section, you'll first learn why and how to be more intentional with your loved ones. Then, you'll learn why you should delegate most of your housework and how to do it. Be more intentional with your loved ones. Vanderkam recommends that you be more intentional with your loved ones. This is important not only because it will benefit your relationships with them, but also because your relationships with your children and partner are unique strengths. Only you can parent, not babysit, your own children in your unique way. For example, you might be able to foster your kids' love of the outdoors because you also love the outdoors, whereas your partner can't foster that passion in the same way because they prefer being inside. And only you can invest time in your partnership. What other authors say about being intentional at home. Like Vanderkam, indistractable author Nir Eyal also recommends that you intentionally schedule your personal time, stating that unless you schedule dedicated time to your relationships, you'll likely prioritize more urgent activities and thus only spend your leftover time with your loved ones. But instead of scheduling your time around your unique strengths, Eyal recommends building your schedule around your responsibilities, which include your loved ones and your values, whatever's important to you within each responsibility. So when scheduling your time with your children and partner, Eyal recommends that you focus on doing activities that align with your values. For example, if you and your partner both value mindfulness, you could schedule a meditation date. Maximize time with your children. By being intentional with your kids, you'll spend meaningful time with them instead of watching too much TV or getting bored with the routine. To be more intentional with your children, Vanderkam recommends that you maximize both the quantity and the quality of the time you spend with them. To maximize the quantity, adjust your work schedule so that you work in chunks, like from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 6 to 9 p.m., instead of throughout the entire workday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. By chunking your workday, you'll work the same number of hours but gain free time to spend with your kids while they're still awake. To maximize the quality, Vanderkam suggests that you first ask your kids to create their own bucket lists. Select activities that you'll also enjoy, and schedule time to do those activities together. For example, if you both enjoy basketball, go to a game together. Improve the time you spend with your kids. When deciding what times to spend with your kids versus what times you work, consider not just when you're available, but your and your kids' energy levels. The Power of When author Michael Bruce explains that we all have different biological clocks, or chronotypes, so we're biologically programmed to be productive at certain times. So even if you're able to work from 6 to 9 p.m., you might have low energy and not get anything done. Moreover, your kids also have biological clocks that may not match yours, so they might be tired at 2 p.m. even though you're ready to play. To find a time that matches both of your energy levels, discover your chronotype with this quiz. Once you decide when to spend time with your kids, how should you spend time with them? Consider broadening your horizons and trying activities from your kids' bucket list, even if you're uncertain whether you'll enjoy them. You can also try doing projects with them and fully engaging with them instead of trying to rush through the activities. In The Happiness Project, Gretchen Rubin explains that doing projects with your kids has high potential for happiness because you go through all 4 stages of happiness. You happily anticipate the project, savor the joy of doing the project, express your happiness when you complete it, and recall the joy of doing it. For example, if you build dollhouse furniture with your child instead of buying it, your child anticipates the excitement of building it. You both savor the joy of building it. Your child expresses her happiness each time she plays with the completed furniture, and you both can recall the happy memories of working on the project together and playing with the dollhouse. Spend time with your partner. By being intentional with your partner, you'll nurture your relationships and develop a happy partnership that can withstand life's inevitable challenges. To do this, Vanderkam recommends 3 strategies. First, schedule regular dates. If you can't afford childcare, plan a romantic evening at home. Second, each night before bed, spend 30 minutes talking. Third, connect with your partner briefly throughout the day by calling or texting. Short-form note, in How to Not Die Alone, Logan Ury also recommends that you intentionally schedule time with your partner to nurture your relationship and withstand challenges. But rather than regular romantic dates, Ury recommends scheduling a weekly meeting to communicate things that might otherwise have been brushed aside. Also, Ury suggests you write and regularly revise a relationship agreement that articulates your relationship values and how you'll express them. Delegate housework. To maximize your time at home with your loved ones, Vanderkam suggests that you delegate your housework. Housework probably isn't a unique strength, so it's better to delegate it while you focus on parenting and your partnership. Vanderkam notes that many people resist delegating housework because it costs too much. However, she argues that you should delegate your housework despite the expenses involved for 2 main reasons. First, housework only seems expensive because it's usually considered free female labor. Second, paying others to do your housework is likely worth the investment because it buys you back time to focus on more important tasks. For example, if you make $50 per hour and spend 6 hours weekly cleaning, this costs you $300. If hiring a housekeeper costs $100 but eliminates your cleaning time, you're saving $200. Why we devalue housework and how much you should pay to delegate it. In Invisible Women, Criado Perez explains that when measuring a country's gross domestic product, or GDP, economists exclude the value of female household labor because determining its worth and measuring it is too difficult. Because our society largely ignores the economic value of unpaid female labor, paying for housework seems expensive by comparison. So how much should you pay to delegate housework? Basing this number on your hourly rate comes with several issues. Notably, it assumes that you can earn back any money you spend by spending your newly freed up time working. But if you choose not to work during your newly freed up time, you should base your ability to pay on how much you value your free time, not how much money you could make if you otherwise spent that time working. Clearer Thinking's Time Worth tool asks several questions to help you make that valuation so you can determine how much you're willing to pay to gain more free time. To delegate your housework, Vanderkam recommends that you first decide which chores to delegate. Review your time record and figure out how much time you spent on the following chores: laundry, food preparation, from shopping to cleanup, general cleaning, and maintenance tasks, which are infrequent but time-consuming, like calling your internet provider when the Wi-Fi's out. Then, select one to delegate, whether it's the chore that takes the most time or the one you dislike the most. Short-form note: if you choose to delegate your housework, there are several techniques you can use to spend less money and save even more time. When grocery shopping online, select the right provider. One critic of Instacart, an online grocery shopping service, complained that male shoppers rarely got her order right. If you hire a cleaning service, ask them to rotate what rooms they clean so that you're not paying to have your whole house cleaned every visit. And if you struggle to find a good virtual assistant or personal concierge, consider TaskRabbit. It helps you find freelance laborers and has customer reviews, so you can feel safer inviting a stranger into your home. Your next step will depend on which chore you've decided to delegate. 1. If you dislike laundry, hire a laundry service to wash and fold your clothes. Your dry cleaner may offer this service. Otherwise, a quick internet search will reveal the options in your area. To save even more time, select one that both picks up and delivers your clothes. 2. If you dislike food preparation, Vanderkam recommends 2 strategies. First, shop for groceries online. You can shop whenever it's convenient, save time commuting, and easily refill your grocery order instead of looking for the same carton of milk you buy every week. Second, when shopping online, purchase pre-made foods to simplify meal prep. For example, you might buy a carton of broth and frozen vegetables for a simple soup. 3. If you dislike general cleaning, hire a cleaning service. However, even if you do so, you'll likely still spend a significant amount of time on daily upkeep, such as clearing your kitchen counter. Minimize this time by focusing on clearing your surfaces. If your surfaces are clean, your house will feel clean, even if your drawers look like a hurricane hit them. 4. If you dislike maintenance tasks, Vanderkam recommends that you hire an assistant. To do so affordably, search for a virtual assistant online. Alternatively, look for a personal concierge in your area. These people, or companies, will perform your maintenance tasks for an hourly, monthly, or per project fee. Other ways to spend less time on housework. What if you don't want to delegate your housework to strangers? For example, many laundry services only dry your clothes in a dryer, but you may prefer to line dry your clothes, which helps protect the fabric long term. You may have health concerns that preclude you from buying pre-made foods, which are often high in sugar, fat, and salt. Or, like many of Vanderkam's critics, you may be unwilling to spend money to delegate housework. You could do yourself simply because housework isn't your unique strength. One option is to ask your family to do more. For example, you may task your kids with doing more. Select age-appropriate chores. Toddlers are capable of picking up toys they've strewn around, while older kids can help more with daily upkeep. If you're a heterosexually partnered woman, dividing chores more fairly with your partner may ease your burden, as you likely do twice as many chores as your partner. To divide chores fairly, first determine what chores you value. For example, you may not care that the living room is cluttered but want clean floors. Then, divide them up after agreeing on the specifics of how that chore is done so that you both feel like you're taking on a relatively equal share. If you think cleaning floors requires mopping but he thinks a quick sweep will do, you'll both be unhappy. If you're unable to lessen your own load, there are some tricks you can use to make certain chores take even less time. To save time on laundry, experts suggest that you purchase separate hampers for your whites and colors, and that you enlist your family's help to sort the clothes accordingly instead of spending precious time sorting through a pile of laundry before you wash it. Additionally, consider hanging most of your clothes instead of folding them. To save time preparing food, purchase appliances that will help reduce your prep time. For example, a mandolin makes quick work of slicing onions. New section. Why and how to be intentional with your leisure. Now that you've learned how to be intentional at work and at home, you'll learn how to be intentional with your leisure time. In this section, we'll discuss why you should schedule your leisure time and how to do it. Why you should be intentional about your leisure time. According to Vanderkam, if you want your leisure time to be meaningful, you should schedule it. Otherwise, you'll spend too much time watching TV. Vanderkam asserts that most Americans think they have less leisure time than they do because they spend too much time watching TV. Most Americans claim to have just 16.5 hours of leisure time per week. However, data indicates they have 30 hours. They just don't realize it because they spend 20 hours mindlessly watching television. Vanderkam argues that this underestimation is a result of not being intentional about leisure time. TV watching isn't necessarily a fulfilling leisure activity. One study found that it brings less joy than several other activities, such as reading or hiking. However, we choose it because it's easy. It's affordable, mindless, and easy to do whenever you have a few minutes. Why modern Americans aren't intentional about leisure. Other experts, like digital minimalism author Cal Newport, agree that unless you're intentional about your leisure, you'll fill your time with low-quality activities, like watching TV or scrolling through your phone messages. Modern data suggests that Americans have more free time than Vanderkam suggests, and that we're spending an even greater percentage mindlessly. A 2019 survey suggests that Americans think they have less than 4 hours of leisure time per week, but data from the same year suggests that, in reality, Americans had nearly 35 hours of weekly leisure time. So where does all this time go? While Americans continue to devote 21 hours a week to watching TV, a 2020 study found that they've added on even more screen time by spending 4 hours daily on their mobile devices. The study didn't differentiate between business-related apps and leisure apps. However, several of the most popular apps used were leisure-related, like Discord. So if we assume that just half of the time Americans spend on their mobile devices is leisure-related, that adds up to 33 hours a week they're mindlessly wasting on low-quality leisure activities. Why is this happening? Unlike Vanderkam, Newport attributes this tendency not just to a lack of planning, but also to a societal shift. In recent decades, employers have demanded constant access to employees, so the line has blurred between people's personal and professional lives. As a result, community bonds and traditions have fallen by the wayside. These lifestyle changes have created a void in satisfying and social leisure, a void we fill mindlessly with easy and affordable activities. Therefore, if you want to do meaningful activities in your leisure time, you need to be intentional about your leisure. But how? Make time for leisure activities. Vanderkam gives the following tips for being intentional about your leisure time. 1. Choose your leisurely pursuits. Experiment with several items on your bucket list to find 1 to 3 activities you'd like to spend up to 10 hours on weekly. Make sure to include exercise. As Vanderkam notes, it's both essential to your health and a unique strength because nobody else can do it for you. 2. Schedule these pursuits in your weekly calendar. Vanderkam recommends that you be flexible when scheduling these activities during the week. Consider waking up early or trading childcare duties with your spouse one night a week. And don't forget to plan at least one fun weekend activity. Brainstorm what you'd like to do with your family or friends at the beginning of each week, then confirm those plans midweek. 3. Create lists of leisure activities that you can do in short bursts. Review your bucket list and separate the activities you can do in less than 10 minutes from those you can do in less than 30 minutes. Then, do one of those activities whenever you have small bits of free time. For example, you could doodle a picture instead of scrolling through your phone while waiting at the doctor's office. How other experts recommend being intentional about your leisure. What are other ways to intentionally spend your leisure time? Instead of specifying that you experiment with several activities on a bucket list or focus on your unique strengths, like exercise, Newport recommends in Digital Minimalism first that you do something demanding, which will energize you more than a passive activity. Additionally, Newport suggests that you create something with your hands. Humans are driven to prove their self-worth, and when you create something, you end up with a finished product that you can point to as proof of your competence. Newport also suggests that you create a seasonal leisure plan. Each season, create a specific leisure-related goal that you want to achieve. Then, break down the steps that you'll need to take to get there. For example, if your seasonal goal is to play 12 Beatles songs on guitar, your steps would include learning and memorizing each song. Finally, schedule time to work on them at the beginning of the week. Newport doesn't specify how long each leisure block should be, but you could break these activities down into 10 and 30-minute segments you can do during unexpected bursts of free time. For example, spend 10 minutes searching for sheet music on your phone instead of scrolling Instagram. However, not everybody recommends that you schedule exactly when you'll pursue leisure. One study found that if you schedule your leisure activity at an exact time, like 9 a.m., you won't enjoy the activity as much because it feels like work. Combat these negative effects by making only a rough schedule and being flexible about how you implement it. For example, try telling yourself that you'll practice guitar on 2 early mornings instead of specifying exact dates, or planning a social weekend activity for Saturday afternoon instead of Saturday at 2 p.m. Of course, this doesn't work in all cases. If you're trading childcare duties with your spouse, you likely need to schedule exact times so that you both can ensure you're off work.